Redditors who waited till their wedding night to have sex. Was it what you expected and what's something humorous that happened? I remember having to remove 38 bobby pins from my wife's hair before I could take her clothes off. Not the best foreplay. Friend of mine from school waited until the wedding night. He was a virgin and I believe she was too. Both very attractive but very religious. No birth control used by her, so he, being a responsible guy, used a condom. Shortly after starting he started experiencing some discomfort, a persistent burning and tingling that crescendoed in intensity. He stopped and removed the condom and noticed some severe reddening and swelling in his nethers. A short time later he was in the ER getting IV steroids and Benadryl with his brand new bride at his side. And that was how he found out he has a latex allergy. My wife and I were both virgins when we got married. She had worked all day that day to get everything ready. By the time we got back to the new home at 10:30 p.m., she was exhausted. I decided to go to bed with her. No intercourse. She still feels awful to this day. On the plus side, she has a higher libido than I. When we finished having intercourse, my husband pulled out and my Nuva ring was on his dong. He and I start laughing and he says we have a winner in an old times carnival guy voice. My lung collapsed and we spent the next 2 weeks in the hospital. I can honestly say it took my breath away. I got really sick the night before the wedding. Spent the whole day medicated with ibuprofen to keep my fever down. Fell asleep after the wedding. No intercourse. Wife and I waited. Our counselors advised us to talk about expectations for intercourse, mainly to keep them relaxed and remember that we're still getting to know each other. We have 40+ years to get better. Low pressure and lots of fun is how I describe it. Also, we're both educated people familiar with the mechanics of intercourse, so that made me feel a lot more relaxed before our honeymoon. My husband and I both waited until our wedding night to have intercourse, both of us virgins at the time. I had dealt with extreme horror stories of losing the V card from friends and my sister, all of which I called bull and looked it up myself. So the night was pretty fantastic because I made the effort to actually figure out how to avoid the worst. But probably something humorous that happened to us was first time on my hands and knees. Neither of us were prepared for the amazing vag farts that erupted in the throes of passion. And for some reason, that position made it 10x worse. Hands down the funniest thing. Laughing intercourse is some of the best intercourse. My wife and I were both virgins on our wedding night. We were doing the reception after the honeymoon. So right after lunch we were on our way. We got back to my apartment, now our apartment, and she asked me to help her out of her dress. One thing of course led to another and before I know it she's sucking my dong and makes me CM all over her boobs. I apologize for the mess, but she says she did it on purpose cause she wanted to know what CM looked like. But that's not the funniest part of the story. As I'm admiring my handiwork, there's a knock at the door. My friend had been rooming with me and was going to house sit for us, but I had told him not to come over to the house for a while. I opened the door in a towel and I'm greeted by my entire troop of groomsmen. They just kinda stare at me for a sec, but when my wife pokes out in a towel of her own, the cheering and clapping ensued. My roommate's girlfriend had apparently been over before the wedding and had left her work clothes there. So after that bit of awkward we just left on our honeymoon. Buddy of mine, not me. We went to a Bible college here in the States. If anyone has ever been to know some who has gone to a Bible college, you know soul mates are found within weeks. Did you two just meet? Yes. Do you know her mom's name number? Do you know where she was born number? That's how I know we're soulmates. Our connection is deeper than that. The Lord wants us to be together. So he meets his soulmate and within 18 months they are married. No intercourse beforehand for religious reasons. He was a gymnast from very young until he got married. So they are in the hotel room about to get it on and she goes to the bathroom to put on lingerie and whatnot and he figures he will surprise her with a cool flexible gymnast position when she comes out. A combo of finally seeing a girl almost naked, general excitement, trying too hard to be flexible and a healthy dinner cause him to crap himself right there in front of his wife of 12 hours. Right on the silk sheets and everything. It took nearly half a year for them to finally have intercourse after that. Just the embarrassment and letdown of expectations was too much for a while. My friend married a good Mormon boy. She'd had some not so innocent experiences but was generally pretty good at sticking to her beliefs. He was probably the most committed Mormon I've ever met, however, and the proof is what happened their wedding night. They go to start having intercourse and the poor boy has never or barely even touched his dong. Like, ever. I believe he was uncircumcised, because she explained to me that he was unable to stretch the skin, and getting hard or having intercourse was extremely painful for him. It persisted for weeks until he finally started to get used to it. Everyone talks about how much losing your virginity is supposed to hurt for girls, but dang if that isn't some next level crap. Wife and I are LDS. Both of us were first timers. We talked a lot about expectations and that kept us from having a nightmare of a night like many of our friends did on their wedding nights. A big thing to be aware of is that a girl's first time is going to hurt her due to stretching and whatnot. We took this, dong size, and the fact that I was probably going to CM in the first 5 seconds anyway. We actually bet on how long I would last into consideration and planned on using lots of lube and doing lots of foreplay. We took it slow, messed around in a jacuzzi, and when we decided to give the all-in out a whirl we lubed each other up on the bed and she said it'd be easier for her to be on top so she could manage the slow insertion of my cockaroony. She got on, and kind of fell forward. She's a klutz. And when she put her hand down on the bed to stabilize she put it down right on the open tube of lube. It squirted out all over me. It was cold. I screamed. We laughed. I came. Best night of my life. My wife and I were not virgins but we decided to wait till our wedding night to build up excitement. It was all worth the wait. Intercourse became something I really looked forward to with my wife and it was a cherry on top of the wedding day. The funny thing that happened is that we were both so drunk we fell asleep during. I am still unmarried, so definitely not me but my sister, very devout to this day in the fundamentalist sect we were raised in, and I were in a bookstore a couple of months before her wedding to the only man she has ever kissed. We stumbled upon a copy of The Joy of Sex, and she picked it up. I teased her, very gently, and she replied I don't know anything about intercourse, and it just occurred to me that he doesn't either. It's not fair for me to expect him to know how to do anything, and here's a book that I can get at least some idea from before the wedding night. I will never stop being proud of her for that. BTW they've been married 18 years and have 6 beautiful children, and are one of the best couples I've ever encountered. My wife was a virgin, I was not, and decided she wanted to wait for marriage. I went along with it cause love. Wedding night. She had a sinus infection, so that was a bust. Honeymoon. She was in the middle of Shark Week, but we gave it a go anyway. Doesn't fit. Like, literally doesn't fit. No amount of foreplay, lube, whatever helped. I'm slightly on the right hand side of the bell curve when it comes to dong size, but not exactly P-star material. She's 5'9", and not petite, but it took us many months to even get the mechanics of it working for us, and it was never easy going. Luckily for us, childbirth rearranged stuff a bit down there and it works out much easier for us now. Son, you will never know how much you mean to us. My wife and I were both virgins. We had a lot of friends from out of town come to the ceremony so we waited till the night after when we were in Cancun for the honeymoon. Both so we could spend time with our friends and so we could make our first time a little more exotic by doing it in another country. It was great. Had to take it slow the first couple times but we had fun. The 3 full days we were there we averaged 8 times per day so there's that. I fibbed twice the 2 partial days. Humorous? Only thing I can really say was humorous was that I had made a Spotify playlist for the special moment but couldn't access it due to no free internet access at the resort. So, I just found an upbeat instrumental song on Mexican radio and we went at it. In retrospect, I think this was better and made it more fun. We had an 11 AM wedding so reception was done around 3 o'clock. We drove to our new apartment and my wife took no time in going into the bedroom and changing into lingerie and jumping on me. We did the deed, cleaned up and went and picked up Mexican takeout, sat by the fire ate and then did it again although a little gentler with her being sore with it being the first time. To this day she'll still bring it up as one of her favorite memories. Not me, a friend. They were both virgins for religious reasons. That it was worth the wait, and was magical and special. That it went fine, better than fine. I wasn't about to ask for details, but about 90% of their friends texted the next morning asking how it went. going off of my cousin's wedding. She fell asleep on the way back to the hotel, so I am 98% sure nothing happened that night. But by the time they got back from their honeymoon, they were expecting a kid, so I guess it went well for them. We waited. I'm not particularly religious, but my wife is, and it was important to her, and honestly, even without religion, I was always more towards that direction anyway. Personally, I wouldn't be comfortable having intercourse with someone I'm not planning to spend my life with. Don't mind if other people don't have the same emotional reaction I do. That's just how I'm wired. Anyway, not a lot of story I'm going to share about the details, but intercourse was great. The story I will share, though, is right before. So, we left the wedding reception and went home. My wife had moved her stuff in over the last few weeks, though we had still officially been living apart. Never mind that I think she'd only slept somewhere else like 4 times in the past 2 months. Neither of our families live in the area, so our place is the only place to store wedding related stuff. Everyone else is at hotels. So families help us pack up the reception and my family offers to help bring all the stuff we're keeping to the apartment, which we take them up on, because we're on the 3rd floor and it's a lot of stuff. And then they stayed to talk for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I finally had to physically shove them out of our living room and out the door, my mother laughing the whole time. They all knew exactly what they were doing. I was certainly not, nor was she. However, this is sort of relevant. I'm a guy but got the birds and bees talk from my mother. During that and a few times after she made the comment that she and my father had waited for their wedding night, I assume this was some sort of advice to me against premarital sex. I was a 120-pound nerd with acne and an all-encompassing fear of girls, so this was not a risk. Years later, during planning for my wedding reception, she told the story that she was disappointed she hadn't gotten to eat dinner at her own reception because my father had insisted they leave as soon as the dance and cake were over. Wasn't until much later that I realized these two were related. That my father had put up with 4 years of celibate bulls, was legally married and wasn't waiting anymore. Unexpected thoughts about your parents' sex life are never a welcome thing, but I must admit, laughed a bit at the realization. Funny story, had birdseed at the end of the reception. When we got to the hotel and it was time to do the deed, there was birdseed everywhere. First time I'm seeing my wife naked and we're picking birdseed out of each other's goods standing in the middle of the jacuzzi tub. That I thought would be romantic. 10/10 would do again though. I'll be the Debbie Downer. He was a virgin, I wasn't. It kinda sucked. There is no way of knowing if you'll be sexually compatible if you decide to wait until the wedding night. Turns out, over time, that he likes very dominant, take charge women in bed, and yet that's what I like from men. We've both moved on, for that and many other reasons. My husband and I had our first time on our wedding night. We had gone to premarital counseling and discussed things like how many times a week did we expect intercourse, consent in a marriage, etc. I educated myself on the best ways to prepare in case of pain, though I didn't assume pain was automatic unless you had vaginal issues or tried to rush things. I also realized that knowing my own body better was a must, so I did. My husband and I communicated our needs that night, took it slow, lots of foreplay, and had an awesome time and great first time intercourse. However, one should limit themselves on how many times they have intercourse in the first 24 hours. Since my previous experience was self-play, I assumed I'd be fine. This is not the case and I was very sore. Worth it and fun, but a poor decision later. I don't have a funny story from that night, but we've definitely knocked over a glass of water or two on our nightstand. Poor balance, and missing the correct hole and nearly having unwanted butt frick. Intercourse should be pleasurable and romantic, but also fun and ridiculous. Have a good time. The people I know who struggled were the ones who didn't talk about it, didn't educate themselves, and didn't communicate to one another as they went. Those people make me sad. Therefore, when I know someone who has waited, I let them know they can ask me absolutely anything and get an answer. On the car ride over, we were getting pretty anxious knowing what was about to happen. We finally leave the wedding, drive off, make it to the B&B, got into our room, and suddenly a massive dragonfly flew by us and was going crazy around room. I screamed, ran into the bathroom while my husband had his first marital band duty trying to catch it. All in all, it was a pretty funny start to evening. Everything went really well after that and we are so glad we waited. It truly was the best choice for us as a couple. Friend of a friend story. She and her husband were raised in strict Catholic households. So not only were they virgins, their sexual education was inadequate. On the wedding night she learned how inadequate, and one of the biggest problems was, in her words, "I didn't know about lube." The husband didn't care and their resultant sex life was terrible. I don't think she understood getting herself off at that point either. Not surprisingly, they divorced inside of 2 years and she left town. There is a happy ending in that she remarried to a woman and they're quite happy. My wife and I waited. Prior to the wedding we were unsure if we wanted to do it on our wedding night or wait till the next day. Due to exhaustion, me being a member of the XY, obviously felt like we should go for it. So we get started with the warm up and things are going great. We show each other our parts for the first time, and life is good. Being a complete noob at this, I was confused when we start to get to the good stuff and it's not that good. She was an extremely tight fit, to the point of us not really making it work. And I am thinking to myself, holy crap, am I ginormous down there? Turns out my junk size is fairly average and she is just a little dry. We got to the finish line eventually, and it was amazing and beautiful in an intimate kind of way, but not really in a physical way. After many hours of hard work and practice, we figured out that lube is our best friend. Now things are amazing in every aspect. Leading up to a honeymoon, people provide all sorts of advice, suggestions, and jokes about what exactly goes on during a wedding night. However, there was one aspect no one prepared me for. She had her hair done up for the wedding and we spent the better part of an hour at the hotel extracting hairpins. If we were flying out that night, we would probably have missed out flight trying to get through security. Everything went great, steamy, passionate, romantic. It wasn't until we watched the video playback that we realized how funny we looked. This is Diamond SpongeBob. He only appears every 200,000 videos. Subscribe for good luck. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.